Hi, I am Susie Sheehan, and I'm going to be going over some techniques for photorealism in renderings today. Some fun facts about me. I've been working in the design industry for about 15 years, and I found my love for design in the furniture world. So I actually work at a furniture dealer. My love for design started with my mom's 1960s home book. I started creating these little vignettes of spaces and like putting them in the little like tabs when I was just 10 years old. So I really loved design that early on. And then in my spare time, I make children's books for my nieces, my nephews, and my daughter. And here are just a few examples of those that I've really had fun with. So we're going to talk about why use photorealistic renderings. The first, most obvious, is visual representation. So it really allows a client to understand their space better in relation to finishes, the space itself. It just kind of takes a two-dimensional drawing to the next level. And then it's also a way for designers to just experiment with finishes and materials to help clients achieve the look and the feel that they want in the space. And then also the most important thing too is just helping to facilitate that conversation. I think CET does a great job at helping move a project from step one to the finish line by providing these photorealistic or environmental images. So what we're going to talk about what's new in CET. I just have a couple of little tidbits about what's new. You may have heard it already, but just kind of drive the point home with things related to photorealistic renders. Also setting up the space, tips and tricks of how to kind of create a space that looks more realistic. We're going to talk about lighting, PBR materials, some advanced photo lab settings, HDR backgrounds like you're kind of seeing outside this window. And then we're going to have a little fun section where we're going to talk about neon light fixtures. So what's new? We're going to talk about with CET, they've added some additional picture frame matting options. I'm going to go over to CET right now. And in your CET tabs, you're just going to do image on wall. And so what you're going to notice has changed. You can change the image size. You can change it to landscape or portrait. And then there's just different options within that. So you can kind of go, I usually just do full size. And then what you can do is have a thin, wide, or custom frame. I typically do either the thin or the wide. I think they're nice settings. You can also change the frame material. So you can change it to any of these that are available. You can also do a custom one painted on as well. And then what's new with this additionally is you can now actually add matting, which is really cool. So you're going to notice you click the matting button, nothing happens. You do need to add the matting whip for it to show up. In CET, there are two different options that it gives you, dark gray or white, but you can also just simply paint on any matting color. We'll do this nice fuchsia color, totally unrealistic. But just, again, it kind of just makes it a little bit more of the photorealism with having these artwork options expanded. And they've also added these sort of tabs as well to the photo lab. So what you'll notice here is they've added a sunlight dial, or I'm sorry, sunlight kind of tab here, which just allows you to control the sunlight a little bit better. And then in post-processing, this is going to look a little different. Your tone map background is new, but your tone map and denoise are the same. It just isn't a checkbox anymore. They've also added this cool again, slider for the temperature. We're going to look at this a bit later, a little closer, but this is something new that they've added. We're going to talk about that. And then what is cool is that CET no longer makes you have to go in and go to your SketchUp, import a file, find it that way. So now actually what you can do is physically drop, and this goes with DWGs, favorites, SketchUp files. I'm sure there are more options, but it just allows you to drag those into your file. So literally easy as bringing it in like this. Super, super simple. So those are some nice features that have been added. Go to setting up the space. So some tips and tricks. The most common thing that you probably wouldn't imagine is blocks hovering over a surface. So as you can see, all of these little features are sitting right on that surface. If you have anything hovering above the surface, it's going to take away from that photorealism quality. So making sure the elevations are set to the proper height is very important. You know, in this, I've kind of created some imperfections, adding a little bit of clutter, offsetting angles like chairs, lamps, poofs, whatever it might be, is always going to add a nice quality. Adding accessories like rugs, lamps, everything like that, plants, anything like that is going to kind of elevate the drawing. And then as you can see here, I've added in this whole wall here is actually from 3D Warehouse. And then I just kind of painted it and edited it as I wanted to, kind of took things out, added stuff in. So it is from 3D SketchUp Warehouse, but there are other sites as well that are paid subscriptions. I think 3D Warehouse is great and it's free for SketchUp. So that's typically what I go with, but there are other options. And so sometimes you bring in a 3D symbol from SketchUp and you'll get this pesky little guy that's like this two-dimensional image behind the image, behind the 3D image. So it will show up in your rendering. I've tested that out. So a really simple way to actually just delete that background image is going to be to go to your Edit Graphics, and then you're going to make the symbol editable. And I'm showing a split mesh. You don't actually need to do that anymore. You can click out of it, click that background, and hit detach. So I'm going to show you one more time in CET. So if I were to take this symbol, and I'm going to go to my Edit Graphics tool, just like this. I'm going to say Make Editable, and I'm going to select this image right here. So all you have to do is simply click out of that. You're going to hit that background image, hit Detach, and Delete. So simple as that. So really, really easy to do. If you want to undo it, you can just click Control Z as many times and then it undoes it, or you can hit Revert. So if you hit Make Editable, click out, Detach, Delete. If you were to click this and hit Revert, it will bring that back. So kind of an easy way to remove that image. And then some additional tips and tricks we're going to talk about. Adding texture. So things like, you know, this kind of hung blanket that you're seeing on this chair. It's from 3D Warehouse. It kind of just came this way with the chair, but you can also, if you like this, you can also pull this and then edit it out and put it on another item or put it on a sofa or anything like that. There's also some other really great kind of blankets and things like that too. You can also think about lighting. So, you know, as you can see, this is a daytime render. So in this case, I chose not to add any lights to this 3D Warehouse symbol. But if you were doing, if you wanted to add light to this, it's kind of nice because then it draws a little bit of attention to it. You could add an Omni light to this 3D symbol. And then you also can add things like Omni lights to things like televisions and monitors, and it just gives it that glow that you would get from a TV. Additionally, you can just think like a photographer. So does it look like a realistic view? If you have the elevation set to like 2 feet tall, it's obviously not going to take on a very realistic quality unless you're trying to show the underside of a table. So you kind of want to adjust it as, you know, I see like 5'7", 5'9". It's kind of the range that I kind of try to be. If it's a shorter ceiling, maybe you reduce it a little bit more, but you kind of play around with it, make sure it looks like that realistic kind of look. And then I also try to preset the view that I want to see. The reason being, I have some features here like this clock, this planter. Sometimes you're not going to see that. So it's almost a waste to put these items in if you're not going to see it in your rendering. So kind of adjusting that view beforehand and then deciding what accessories and features to add after the fact. So we're going to talk about lighting. So I think most of you know probably how to add a basic ceiling light fixture. If you're not aware, so the easiest way to do it is if you have your 4 walls built, essentially go to the ceiling light tab here and draw on your ceiling. You always want to make sure that you'll click on this. The green dialog box will pop up right here, and you basically want to make sure your lights are on. So that's like super basic, just making sure lights are on. It will be that set that way as a standard, but you just want to make sure that's turned on. Unless the client has specifically told me, that they have a drop ceiling, I do usually just turn it into a circle can. So you can change that here, and I remove the beams. So that's something that I personally like to do. And then you can change the row spacing. Like if you want more lighting, you can change the spacing to be closer. If you want less lighting, you can make them further away. So we're in CET, and if we add this ceiling, again, you're just going to drag and drop it over, and you click on this. And so what I noticed with this new CET update is when you actually click this use area light, what is happening is you're getting this perimeter around the light fixture or around the ceiling. So not sure why it's happening. CET is aware and they're trying to correct the issue, but you want to make sure for now that this use area light is actually unchecked. Normally, it would help distribute light, evenly throughout the space. In this case, you want to uncheck that. And then you can click these 3 little dots here that says light settings. There are 4 settings here. I typically only use 2, light bulb or ceiling light. Light bulb is only going to go up to 1500 lumens of brightness. Ceiling light basically starts at 1500. So the more windows you have in the space, the less lighting you're going to want. So I would say in that case, the light bulb is sufficient. I usually started at the highest brightness and then adjusted down as needed. So you always want to be a little brighter and then go backwards. And you can always kind of change that in post-processing as well. The ceiling light is going to always be brighter. So I tend to kind of avoid that one. I think it's a little too bright, but if you had a larger space with less windows, that might be a good option to use. And then here you have a tab that says IES. So we're going to look at this IES tab. And essentially what IES is you can see these different kind of light distribution options that the IES allows you to see. So IES is essentially how light is spread from a light source. It allows you to change the direction of that light. I don't use this for ceiling lights. You could. I don't think it necessarily makes sense for a ceiling light because it's usually pretty evenly distributed. But for like a floor lamp or a table lamp, whether it's a SketchUp item or something from CET, you can set that. So it's kind of a nice way to get light spread from, those more particular, like smaller items. And so there are ways to actually download those. So you might have them preset and you might already see them like this. There might be some preset from your company. In the event that it's not, you can actually go to ieslibrary.com and you hit browse. So it comes up after showing you some fun ads, and then you can kind of scroll through and see different options of having this light distribution. So if you decide to say, oh, I have a sconce, I need some uplighting, you can click this. And you'll actually just download this IES file. And then you'll save that to wherever you are saving your files to. So in this case, I'm saving them here. And then when you're in your photo lab space, if you click this IES tool, it's going to come up like this. And it's going to say there's going to be your presets of what you've already done. But you can just hit browse. And then it's going to find which source of light you want. So I'm going to use the one that I downloaded the other day. And this is kind of this uplighting. So it's kind of going to show you that. And then you're going to see different options that you can change it to. If you say, no, I want it to be more of a downlight, more of a focus like that. So there's different things you can do to that. So that's the best way to use the IES feature. You can also use the IES feature with OmniLight symbols. So another cool way to kind of give off light from the SketchUp symbol is to use those OmniLights, add the IES. It's kind of a nice way for sconces or pendant lights or anything like that. So we're going to talk about PBR materials next. So PBR stands for physically based renderings. By using a material like this versus a classic, material in CET, it gives you a little bit more of that realistic quality. It gives off a little bit more texture. You can change things like metallic reflection, roughness, ability to emit light from the image itself. And CET actually offers a free pack, which can be viewed by simply clicking Show PBR Materials in your materials. So if you're up here and you click this button right here. It's going to take a minute to load. And essentially what's going to happen is it's going to bring up all of the PBR materials. So if you want something like a nickel or chrome, this is a really great place to go. So you don't have to kind of create your own PBR material. It also comes up with different carpeting options, bricks, just kind of an easy way to kind of use this. You can also alternatively make your own PBR material. So if I unclick that button and I decide, okay, I'm going to take this sun material, you just want to go into your photo lab and you're going to hit this super simple button, convert to PBR. You can scroll down. You can change things like the opacity. Like I said, you can add the metallic, which is something you can't do if it is a non-PBR material. You can change the roughness of it. Again, the emissive, we're going to talk about that when we do the neon sign, so we're not going to get into that right now. But this is a really easy way to just create kind of a metallic or some, more textured material than you normally get. And in PhotoLab, you're always going to want to use the realistic light setting anytime you have a PBR material. The reason is some of the other presets may not translate those materials the same way. So building up your finished library. So these are some examples from different websites, being polyhaven.com, AmbientCG, and so on. Just kind of textural, excuse me, examples of different, I'm talking too much when I start coughing, different examples of third-party websites that are just kind of like made for you. So different types of flooring, tiles, wall textures, things like that. We already talked about converting your own PBR material, so we're going to go to one of these websites. So polyhaven.com is a really great one. If you scroll down, there's different options. So there's HDRIs, textures, and models. I typically will use these two. So we're going to talk about textures for right now. So just hit browse textures. And then you can choose what type of texture you want. So if we're going to say maybe a wood flooring and say, oh, I like this raw plank wood floor. So you can change these different settings. I usually keep it at 4K. I keep this as what it's shown here, and then you just download it. So once you download that material, it's going to come up with a zip file. And then you're going to go in and you can actually just drop this whole thing into your files of where you want saved. And then when you're back here in your photo lab setting, the easiest way to do it is, I think I showed this before, but you click on any material, hit Material Lab, and if you click this button right here, it has to be a smart finish. So you can click, I'm using Knowles White, for instance, but if you click this, it's going to come up with your plank flooring. So this is where, and it's saying recommended to reduce size, that's fine. So it'll come up with this, and you can kind of change this as need be. But essentially, you just want to paint the flooring. You can change the size of it, anything like that. But it's super simple. And then once you're there, you can kind of convert this again to PBR, change things like opacity, anything like that. So this will give it kind of that additional, it doesn't look much different until you render it. So just kind of a nice feature there. And we're going to start talking about the Photo Lab Advanced settings. So there are different ways you can set this up. These by no means is something you need to stick with every single time. I think it kind of depends on the rendering itself and what you're trying to achieve. However, there are some settings you want to keep the same as always. Something I do want to point out before I go back to CET is that CET has updated their preview render so that it'll closely match the results you would get from using PhotoLab. So rather than have to render something for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, how long it might take, you can hit the preview tool and it'll look pretty close to what it'll look like at the end. So if we're in CET and we're going to go to PhotoLab. As you know, there is the simple and advanced settings. You're going to go to advanced. So we're going to scroll We have this lovely pink frame matte that we're going to show here. And so render mode, we have I keep that at natural light. Render quality, I try to keep that at 100. Really, it's the best quality that they're going to have. But if you are short on time or have less time, I would say 80 to 100 will suffice. It doesn't make a huge difference, so I would say that'd be fine. And then your image dimensions, there's quite a few options. I typically do 1920 by 1080. View mode normal, custom, just keep that the same, nothing needs to change there. Elevation, this is where you can change your elevation. So you can actually just type it in and say, I want it to be 5'8". I'm going to delete this cactus on the floor. And so this is where you can adjust things like pitch, clipping, perspective. Pitch is just going to be the direction you're kind of looking up or down. Typically, I keep that at a 0, but if for some reason you wanted to see a little bit of the floor and you're not seeing it, you can adjust that. Perspective, I don't usually try to mess with unless you're trying to see, again, a little bit more of that view, but keeping it realistic. The further away you get, the less realistic it's going to be. So I usually go up to like 30 is the max. And then clipping is going to almost like create a section of this space. So I don't usually mess with that. Lighting and shadows. Realistic light and sun for natural light are my two favorites. I think realistic light is the best quality. I'm going to show you an example later between the two. So I usually do realistic light. And then this is the sunlight that I talked about. So you can kind of adjust it however bright you want it. I typically keep it at 100 and then change it after the fact, whether it's in post-processing or just re-rendering it in a less bright setting. And then you have this preview shadows tool. Oops, I'm going to recover this. So you have this preview shadow tool. So if you click on preview shadows, getting this, you're basically going to, I lost my thing. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so we're just going to go back to this. Okay, so you're in this preview shadow. So you basically are going to see the direction of the sun in a space. So we're quickly going to draw this. Once we lost it. Okay, we're going to add a window here. So now we're going to go back to our photo lab. Okay, so you basically can change the direction that the sun is coming. So the closer you have it, the further away it's going to be to the window. So I kind of usually will try to set it up and then you'll see the shadows. Let me show you on this page. So this is an example of when you're looking at that preview shadow tool. So the way that I have it here is coming east from this window. So I kind of want to set it up so that you're seeing a nice view from that window and then a nice amount of sun. And then you can also, and I'm going to repeat this a couple of times, you can enable real-time lights. So in this preview tool, if you hit this enable real-time lights button, it's actually going to show you the spread of the IES from that light fixture. So you do not want to keep that turned on. If you keep it turned on and go back to your drawing is going to have lots of issues and CET will hate us all. So I just want to press only turn that on to preview this setting. Otherwise, always keep it turned off. And then we talked a little bit about HDR backgrounds earlier. So what HDR backgrounds do and what they are is essentially a 360-degree panorama photo that allows you to see if you have windows in, all directions of your space, north, south, east, west, you would see that same photo in a different view in each of those. So HDR backgrounds, there are some preset HDR backgrounds available in CET. Or your company may have added some. Polyhaven.com is a great place to browse HDRIs. So back at polyhaven.com, we're going to go down and hit browse HDRIs. So you can kind of see over here, there's different settings of what you can choose. The easiest way I have found is to be very specific. So city sun, and you might like this mountain view. Super unrealistic for outside an office building, but we like the view, so we're going to use it. You can change these settings, so you can change kind of like seeing the quality of it. I keep it at 8K. You're also going to have an HDR or EXR file. You will want to keep it at EXR, and then you're just going to want to download it. So once you download it to your desktop, you find where you want it to be. And then you're going to be in your photo lab. You're going to scroll down and you're going to just go to the panorama. The predefined will be this white background. So if you need to change it back, you can. So for this panorama, you're going to select that. There's going to be, again, some preset ones that you may have already added. In this case, you want to import, and you're going to say, where is my file? It's not here. So you do need to change the file type to an EXR. And this is going to show all of the HDR backgrounds that you have added. So you're just going to select it in. I've already brought it in, but you're just going to double click it. And essentially, once you click it, you do need to then select it from this dropdown. So you're going to say, oh, I'm in the middle of the ocean. That's not going to work. So here's where you can kind of adjust the scale. So you can change it left and right or up and down to get the viewpoint that you want. Oh, excuse me. And then from that point, you'll see it's a little blurry. So a really nice way to kind of be able to see what you're going to see in your render is just hitting this really simple button, increase detail. Some of the outdoor images I find are not quite as crisp as some of the, the city landscapes, I will say, like the nature images aren't as crisp. But again, you can kind of play around with this if you have a night scene. Once you adjust it, you're going to have to hit increase detail again, and then you'll get kind of a better feel for what that will look like in reality. And then as you can see, as you zoom out, you're going to get this background. Sometimes it drives me a little crazy, so what I'll do is just do predefined, standard, and then it goes back to being your usual view. Sometimes there's also in Photolab, the simple settings. Under product lighting, you can change your background image. So here, there are less options for how to adjust it. But if you were to do a render in here, you're going to see some are labeled HDR. And these will also show all of the images you bring in through advanced settings. So you're going to see all the images that you brought in. If we want this, the kind of like mountaintop option, you can bring that in. But in this case, you're not going to be able to change like the vertical direction of it. You can't really increase the detail to see it. So you're just going to get that kind of horizontal change of that image. And then to change it back, just go to predefined. Another thing to keep in mind with these background images, if it doesn't say HDR, it won't physically give off any light. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these background images. I'm going to show you an example of giving a panorama image giving off light in a second, which kind of will give you a better idea. And so here we're going to show, this is an example of a rendering where I pulled in light and I kind of get that direction of the sun here. So this is kind of adjusted so that the light comes in this way, and you can kind of see it's the southwest, kind of at the point where it's bringing in a little light, but not all the way into the space. So you can easily adjust that. This is the example I was talking about, pulling lighting from an image. It's going to change the temperature of the space. So if you have an HDR image and it's a cool setting, like this kind of wintry tone, you're going to get a cooler look in the space. The light is also going to be accentuated a little bit more. Whereas in this warm setting, it's going to have a little bit more warmth. So you can kind of tell the difference between the two. And then these are 4 renderings I created with the same exact scene, same background essentially, and different settings in the advanced setting Photolab. And so the first one I did was sun for natural light, and that's with auto temperature. I felt like it just wasn't very crisp. It didn't look too realistic. I didn't really love how the flooring was coming out, so I kind of played with it. The image-based light wasn't giving off any light from the sun at all, so I didn't love that. Again, it just kind of fell flat. And then you have these realistic light settings, which are my preference, and you're going to see the difference here between as rendered in post-processing and auto temp. So the difference there is you're going to get a little bit more warmth or a little bit cooler. I prefer the bottom right with the auto temperature because of the background. So really, it's a matter of preference. And then pumping up details. So things like adding CET fixtures or SketchUp symbols and adding that IES setting kind of brings attention to that light fixture in the space. Otherwise, it kind of just gets lost amongst all this clutter. You can also add Omni lights. I think I talked about this before for the TV for glow. And then you can also, since there's no way to really adjust the intensity of an HDR background, if you simply paint the glass a frosted glass, or even just paint it slightly so that you're not getting as much of that intensity, it'll help there. So it'll create kind of this illusion of more of a faded image. And then a nighttime render, really the only difference is that obviously you'll want the nighttime image out the window. And under the realistic setting or any of the settings, you'll just want the sunlight off because you won't have sunlight coming in. You kind of want to accentuate the lighting in the space so you can brighten up the lighting in the space. You could even brighten up the TV glow as well, which I didn't do here, but you could. And then in this case, I did keep it as render because I did want a little bit more of that warmth for a nighttime render. So we're going to talk about neon signs. So through many trials and tribulations, I tried different ways to create a neon sign. Obviously, some were not very successful, as you can see here. I created some awesome Barbie text lettering, some not great neon signage, but I kind of found a few different ways to do this. So there are 3 different ways I'm noting here. The first and the easiest way I'm listing as option 3 is by simply bringing in a SketchUp symbol. So if you go to 3D Warehouse and type in neon sign under models, it'll come up with some different options. I found this one. I thought this was kind of cool. It had a cord, it had kind of a wiring behind it. So I downloaded this. And so what I did, and again, you can just drag this. You can just, let's try that again. There we go. Close this. Okay. So we can just drag this into the drawing with great difficulty. And it's going to tell you that you need to reduce the size, which is fine. So you bring it in, kind of comes in funky at a weird angle. So I'll play around with it. And then I'm like, okay, this is close enough. You can actually hit this align tool up at the top. And if you select this and then the wall, it'll kind of align it for you. So it's not perfect. I think I need to actually adjust it here. Let's try that again. So if you align this with the wall, there we go. So you can get a nice angle. And then I'm going to offset it from the wall a bit. Not too much. And this is backwards, I realized. There we go. Okay, so you can kind of offset it from the wall because you want to be able to see that cord. The next step from this, you can make this editable and make the cord a different kind of material. But what you're going to do is you're going to go into your Material Explorer. And my favorite setting to do this is going to plastic. So you essentially can select any of these. I'm going to select this one, go into Material Lab. So by clicking Convert to PBR, you can then change some of these settings. So let's scroll down. I'm going to add a little bit of opacity to this. You don't have to. I kind of just like it with the neon signs. And I'm going to add the metallic because I think that's really cool. You can adjust that here. If you want less metallic, you kind of adjust that. I'm going to bump that up. And then you can hit emissive. So something's going to happen when you click this. It's going to turn white. So what you want to do is this is where you can say, oh, I want to create a different color. So say you want like kind of this like neon sort of color. You can then just paint that material like that. And like I said, you can kind of edit the mesh and create a different color for the cord. I'm not going to do that right now, but you can certainly do that. Then you're going to go into your lights. So you're going to create an Omni light. And what you need to do is basically once you place it, you can adjust the elevation. You can adjust the scale of the Omni light. I tend to keep it at like a 1-ish. You can make it a little smaller, but it's kind of just easier. You have less Omni lights in the space. And then you kind of just meticulously keep adding. It's a little tedious, but you just kind of add the Omni lights kind of offset from the wall. What's going to happen if you don't offset it from the wall is it's kind of going to create the shadowing. So you kind of want to avoid that and have it be a little bit more of that smooth finish. So that's the first option, bringing in that. And we're going to show you the results after. The second option is if you go to your CET tab under 3D text, you can simply add text in. So automatically, I've already typed in welcome at Bauhaus 93. We have these other options for fonts. So these are kind of the fonts that I found that were the best fit for neon signs, but there's lots of different options. So essentially, you can change your font, whatever you want it to be. I have it at Bauhaus 93. And then you can change things like the width of it, make it a little smaller. You can change the elevation of it, everything like that. And then you can change the depth of it too. So the first way I'm going to show you is just one layer of text, and then I'll show you the outcome after. So say we want to add about 2 inches of depth. I've been adding about 2 inches of depth to the lettering. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go in and you're going to go to Material Explorer and you're going to paint it. So I'll show you again. You just basically find which one you want, convert to PBR, add all these settings, and then you'll paint it. So I've already done that in this case, so we're not going to do that. And then you do the same thing. You go into your lighting, Omni lights, and then offset these lights. So you want it offset about the dimension that I'm showing, and then you kind of adjust it in elevation for where you want it. And then you're just going to keep adding them just essentially in front of that light. So it'll give off some of that light. The emissive will also give off some light as well. The last option is to actually do 2 layers of text. So in this option, I actually did 2 layers of text, sandwiched one in front of the other to give it kind of a 3-dimensional quality to it. In the background, I maybe do a 1-inch depth and then 2-inch for the front. And then I'm going to offset it. So by doing that, you're going to do the same thing with your lighting. The only difference is you're going to actually bring this and sandwich it between the 2 lights. So you do want to offset it from the wall again. And you can change the scale, but you're kind of just going to sandwich that light between those 2 texts. So I'm going to show you now how that came out when I tried those 3 different methods. And so this is the first option is the 2 layers of text sandwich with the Omni lights between. I felt like it gave off a little bit more of that 3D quality. This is just that flat 1 layer. Again, everything's painted with that emissive color and offsetting the Omni light from the wall. My favorite was the 3D warehouse. I thought that was obviously the most realistic. It was kind of cool getting the cord just included with it and then the wires behind. You can even make that black and make it stand out a little bit more. And then you're seeing it in kind of like a real space as well, which I thought looked pretty cool. Additionally, what I did was I went into 3D warehouse for this because there's no cord and you kind of want to make it a little bit more realistic because it needs to be plugged in. So what I did was I went to 3D warehouse, took a sconce, edited the sconce out, and just kept the cord itself. So kind of an easy way to create a neon sign, but I'd be curious what other people try to do to kind of accomplish this as well. And so that's it. This is me. This is my email in case you have any questions. And then you can use this app here and this link to scan the QR code to scan with the ID CEC app for any CEU credits. So thanks so much for listening.